to Soccer Mommy, Sophie Allison, dropping her newest album, Sometimes Forever. And last time we were talking about her was 2 years ago with Color Theory. And we were a little bit late to the Sophie Allison train, I guess, in terms of reviewing. We did talk about Your Dog on our end of the year best songs list in 2018. I think it was an honorable mention. I might have put it on. I can't remember. But Color Theory, I think we liked, but I think we were kind of like, it didn't live up to some of the hype from the 2018 album Clean. So we were like, there's probably better things to come from Sophie Allison, but she's always putting out stuff that's interesting in that alternative rock space that is so dominated by women right now. Do you feel like Sometimes Forever stood out to you as a alternative rock female artist drop recently?
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing. Soccer Mommy's definitely held up as one of the new pillars, new paragons of indie rock. Obviously 1/3 of Boy Genius alongside. Wait, is she in Boy Genius? No, she's not in Boy Genius, but she's like a contemporary of the trio in Boy Genius, right? Yep. And I think for me, Your Dog, you mentioned off the debut, really impressive. Coming off someone who made like demos at her college dorm room, like Maggie Rogers. Like the origin story is pretty famous at this point. And Color Theory, while I was a bit up and down on it, I did love Circle the Drain, the biggest hit off that album. That was in my top 10 of 2020. And I think the reason I like Circle the Drain so much is that it's indie rock at its lightest, at its poppest in sound, even if lyrically it's still pretty dark, pretty sad girl, as we come to expect from this sort of thing. So, going into Sometimes Forever, the third Soccer Mommy album, but like she's so established at this point for the kind of artist she is. It's like, wonder what this is going to be like. And while I did not find it as enjoyable to my personal taste, I was definitely impressed with how unexpected some of the developments are on this album, and I think that's really cool. Sophie did not play it safe with this at all, and that's obviously commendable.
Yeah, just talking about Empress of and kind of how it felt like every other track kind of was going back to like a certain type of sound or idea. I really felt like that was almost how I experienced Sometimes Forever, because it feels like one track will be a very traditional alternative rock sad girl track, and then another track will be something that is just totally unexpected, something completely out there. And I don't think there's a better example of that in the album than the first two tracks. Bones, which is very much a track you could find on a Julian Baker or Lucy Dacus album or something like that. And then you go to With You, the next track, and it starts off with that like amazing electric guitar, like descending, no, and you're just like, ooh, this is so singular. Now, some of the lyrics and some of the general concepts that kind of play out in the song go back to a more traditional alternative rock space, but you just kind of have these flourishes throughout that you're just like, ooh, you don't usually hear that on like a Phoebe Bridgers album. And I think that's what sets Soccer Mommy apart, is she is willing to push the boundaries a little bit more than some of her contemporaries. What tracks stood out to you, or what were the swings that you really liked on this?
Yeah, I think excuse me, I think there's two pretty easy ones to point to, which happen to also loop into her collaboration on this album with Omnitrix Point Never. Definitely not something I had expected to see her go down in terms of the road. But Darkness Forever and Unholy Affliction, those two in particular, is like, wow, like I'm not shocked at the darkness in the lyrics, but like to bring it out in the instrumentation and the songcraft in such a electronic way, almost, as far as indie rock goes, those were the songs I was like, wow, it's like definitely not a song like that. Like my cup of tea. I'm not going to run these back, but it's also just not something I expected to hear on this either.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Unholy Affliction, just I think that song is pretty like very cool, like the way that her vocals are so like distorted, almost kind of it's like coming through like a bad radio kind of, and with like the drums just like whirling around it. I love the sound in that. And then you mentioned Darkness Forever. It's it's really just driven for most of this by this like thumping but slow bass line until like kind of the end when it really like kicks back up, and definitely unique sounding on the album and definitely stands out. Um, Really impressed with her going for it. And I think both songs work pretty well for this album, which is kind of looking at like success, but like the darker sides of success in a lot of ways. Um, were there any tracks that you found yourself really loving? Maybe because I know you said you didn't love everything on it.
Yeah. I'd say Shotgun's probably my favorite song on this. Just the snares there really stand out. Overall, just the instrumentation's pretty groovy. Again, probably because it's the latest song I'd say on this album. I also like
Mhm.
the last track, Still. Just thought the acoustic guitar sounded pretty good on that. But I think overall, the reason that I struggle with this album more than anything else was I just kind of struggle with the vocal performance on this. Not so much that it's a bad vocal performance; it's just that it's kind of intentionally washed out amongst the instrumentation, amongst the production, and
Mhm.
that kind of haziness is just not what I'm looking for.
Yeah, it's almost like shoegaze esque at times, where you're almost like, where does her vocal start and some of the instruments begin? But I do enjoy this because it does feel so singular compared to. I mean, we've got an album from each one of them in the past year and a half, I believe. Dacus, Baker, Bridgers, Lindsey Jordan, and now
Right.
Sophie Allison. So yeah, I agree. I think Shotgun really stands out. Feel It All the Time also kind of has that like cool, like very like pronounced guitar playing, which I think is really great. The guitar playing on this is so awesome. There's a couple of tracks that if you really tune in, like the lead guitar is plucking away in ways that you just don't really hear a lot on alternative albums right now. So I really enjoyed her playing on that. But yeah, I liked this album a lot. I think Sophie Allison really is just such a singular artist in that sphere right now. And if you had to pick like your top three, Bridgers, Jordan,
Ooh,
Allison, Dacus,
yeah.
Baker.
Yeah, I'd say Lindsey Jordan. I'd Snail Mail's my number one just because I
Yeah,
loved Valentine the most out of all these recent releases. Hmm. Yeah, I guess two is Phoebe Bridgers. And then I'd say, three. I mean, I love Circle the Drain so much. It might be Soccer Mommy. Like Julian Baker, I just never could really
yeah,
connect with her vocals personally.
and Dacus the album kind of came and went for me as well. I'd say those are probably the top three for me too. But we'll be adding a song from Soccer Mommy to our Nostalgia Best of 2022.